It's summer and it's hot and it's humid, but now is the time to start prepping for our fall vegetable garden. That means we need to get some stuff in place in order to be able to have this wonderful, beautiful, productive garden, which means we need to be doing some planning. And this hopefully will inspire you to get yourself in a really good spot for the fall vegetable garden and make the garden of your dreams. And if you're following along with the planner, I'm gonna be using this fall section in order to help me start laying out my punch list of things I need to do, plus start to actually draw out the garden plan. So one of the first things we need to think about when it comes to our fall vegetable garden is we actually need to think beyond just fall. We need to start thinking about fall, winter, and spring. And we need to start thinking about what are the crops that we really, really wanna grow. Let me amend that. Not just that we want to grow, that we should grow, that we need to grow, that we actually will eat a lot of and use a lot of. I feel like in Florida, especially us vegetable gardeners are notorious for growing interesting and unique things that we have no concept of whether we're gonna use them or not. And I totally understand that because we aren't a place that really, well, you have to wrap your head around that whole classic vegetable gardening thing in order to be successful anyways. So we start getting into these tropical and unusual varieties because we're just trying to find something that works. But then I think sometimes we get too far down that path and then we start to forget one of the fundamental things is like, it doesn't really matter if it grows. It doesn't really matter if it's abundant. It doesn't matter if it's healthy if you ain't gonna eat it. So what Ben and I just did is we went through and we thought about all the crops we've grown. We've thought about all the things that we've talked about growing. And we started making a list of just like all the crops. This was just like, what's everything you wanna grow? What's everything that we could possibly wanna grow? So one of the first things we thought about was, what did we feel like we did a really good job of using everything that we got? Like for us, Cubanelle peppers, we had 2 plants that were really, really productive and we used every single Cubanelle, not even a problem. But on the flip side, when it came to jalapeno peppers, well, we used them all, but we always were kind of in a place of like, what should we? And we were kind of trying to always, I'll call it figure it out, which isn't inherently bad. It's just that you don't want to be constantly in a place with all of your crops of figuring out stuff. You want to have a general way that it funnels into your normal diet or a place where you're going to can it and then it funnels into your normal diet. So for me, what it told me was Cubanelle peppers, we were probably right about the right amount of Cubanelles because that's what we talked about. Do we need more Cubanelle peppers next year or about the same? And then on the flip side, it's like, how many jalapeno plants do we really need if we're always on the edge of struggling to figure out what to do with them and not feeling like excited for the harvest, more like, oh man, we have a lot of jalapenos, what are we doing with these? So after we did that, we basically listed out all the things that we definitely wanted to grow. I started to sketch out some ideas of about how many plants do I think I need. So based on things that I definitely knew I want to grow again and that we probably had the right quantity of plants, I started just to list that out because I knew it off the top of my head. Then the ones that I thought, we probably have the same amount or slightly less, like those jalapenos. And then things like even lettuces. Ben was like, I felt kind of overwhelmed at times, but then at other times we felt like it was just enough. So I feel like we're probably at the right spot with how many lettuces that we had this year for our family. The next thing that we talked about was, are there things that we had wanted to do that we wish we had more of that crop? One of the things that came up this last year was beets. We got into making things like baba ganoush, but we really want to get more into creating some more flavored hummuses. And we had tried this wonderful, delicious beet hummus. So we wanted to increase the amount of beets. We also felt like we could use the beet greens really well, better than we did this year if I placed them in a different location and made them a little bit more accessible. So I just made a lot of notes about these type of things that went well. And that's really where the planner has helped because I can capture things throughout the year so that I'm not having to try to invent them. So whether you use my planner or you just have a place where you keep notes to yourself about how you, not only like what kind of harvest you got, but how did you feel about that harvest? Did you feel like it was easy? Did you feel like it was something that you had to deal with? Did you wish you had planned something a little bit better? That's why it's really important to capture those kind of notes of having a game plan and then actually reflecting on that game plan in the moment, but then also later on. So then after I kind of had a gist of what went well, what we want to grow, what things did we feel like we needed more of, what we probably needed less of. So one of the next things I did is I started just to kind of make note to myself of how many plants do I think I'm gonna need. There's lots of information that can kind of give you an idea, and some of this is just going to end up being trial and error over time, which is again why you want to go and document this so that you kind of get an idea of, I had 16 lettuce plants last year, this year that seemed just about right, so I'll do 16 plants again. But if you don't know, sometimes you just got to try it and then you'll figure it out. Like, we grew radishes, we didn't use any radishes. It ain't happening. I tried to get Ben to like some of them and he's like, not having it, not gonna happen. Now the next thing I do, and this might feel backwards for some of you, but I try to do this because I don't necessarily want that first part influenced by what's gonna happen in the second part. And that's doing a seed inventory. You may be like me and you just have like so many seeds, so many not even open, never open. I just have them. I thought they were great ideas. I saw them, I wanted them, I bought them. But I don't want to grow something just because I have tons of seeds of it, like these Walla Wallas, which I incorrectly tried to grow this last year and realized they were long days and I was just getting, you know, onion greens, which I like onion greens, but didn't use the space the way I wanted it to. Some of the questions that I ask myself when I go through my seed inventory is, what were the varieties? Because I can say I want to grow tomatoes, and I want to use them for salads fresh, but I also want to use them for salsas. But now I can start going through my seed varieties. And I don't know about you, I actually keep empty packets because I always just want to kind of know. It'll help jog my memory because sometimes my little sticks in my notes, that's one of the things I need to get better at this year, is capturing what variety I put where. Sometimes I'm a little too loosey-goosey. I'm a little wild, it's in the name. And I don't always capture, but it's a good way for me to kind of sit there and go like, right, I have those, my 4th of July hybrids, which I didn't actually, did I grow any of these this year? I don't remember. Or is it the fact that I did try growing them and it was on this trellis, which nothing grew on this trellis this year. So, and I've grown these before and I know that they do well. So as I go through, it kind of starts to jog my memory even more of things that maybe I didn't capture in my notes that did go well, didn't go well. Why didn't I use these? Why do I have so many packets of certain seeds? Why do I keep buying them if I'm not gonna grow them? They're so easy to just hoard seed packets. So here are some of the things you should think about as you're going through your seeds. Number one, are any of your seed packets, well, just empty? And you know that you want to grow that same variety again, so you need to make a note that you need to order it. So what am I needing to order more of? Other things to think about as you're going through those seed packets is, you maybe like me, is that you take your seed packets out there and it's Florida and it's humid and there's lots of moisture around, and which seed packets probably got exposed to probably too much moisture, and while there's seeds in them, they're potentially not viable seeds. So as I went through these, I was looking at seed packets going, oh, I'm just gonna order some extra ones just to be on the safe side so that I don't get into the season, especially some of the ones that are pretty fast at germinating, where I'll be able to tell pretty quickly if we have a problem or not. I'm gonna basically order extra seeds just so I'm sure that I'm gonna be able to grow this. And if I don't use them this year, I'll just hold them to next year. They'll be fine. I'm also looking at ones that potentially could be expired. Same idea as the moisture exposure, just again, because we are so humid. And while technically seeds can be viable for a very, very long time, you know, you really don't want to be in the middle of the season. And because we're Florida and we're basically like the opposite of most of the country. We're in the middle of winter and we're trying to find seeds. It just becomes a lot harder. So I really am thinking about all the seeds I want from fall through springtime. And I can always use springtime to go order for the following year, or just impulse buy, you know. I ain't saying, I'm just saying. And then another thing to think about is, if you've grown something before and it's been okay and not quite successful, this would be the time to do some research. Like, I wanted to grow broccoli the last few years. While I've grown broccoli, the flavor's been off, how productive they are, how stressed they get, on and on and on, haven't been the best. So I reached out to my buddy Patrina at Homegrown Florida, and I was like, you had a variety I remember you were recommending for broccoli, and you were really good at broccoli, and what was that variety? So I want to know that variety, and I'm gonna get into my list, and so that I can order some too now ahead of season. And I want you guys to be thinking beyond just fall. This is why it's important to think through the list of things you want to grow, because as you're thinking about what you're going to purchase, here we are at the end of summer or early fall, depending on when you watch this video. Many seed companies are running out of things. Not everything yet, but you're going to start to find more and more out of stocks. So the sooner that you do this exercise and just get seeds on order and get them to your place, or slips or starts, the better. Because using even big box stores, and even a lot of local nurseries just don't have a ton. You will find some, but it becomes a lot harder than it is in the springtime. Oh, now we know what seeds we have, we know what varieties we need to buy. One thing we need to hang on before we potentially go buy, but if you want impulse buys because seeds aren't insanely expensive, is we should really think through our succession planting for beds. This is one of the areas that I have not been the best at, and I feel like if you're a level, 0 gardener, a level 1 gardener, like you being an optimized succession planner, not a big deal. Like if you just want to be like, this is my bed for lettuce, and even though it ends and you could have gotten something in and blah 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 and it could be more productive, I wouldn't worry about it. But if you are a more advanced gardener, I would say a medium to advanced gardener, this is now the next level of thinking we need to do. How long is a crop going to take up a space? Because to just say it's a spring crop or a winter crop, many of these crops go 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months in a location that you may not be able to turn the bed to the next thing that you really wanted. Actually, it's one of the reasons this year that I didn't go and put a lot of effort towards my summer crops, because a lot of my summer crops are going to eat up space for 5, 6 months. And I knew by the time that I got my warm weather crops out of there, such as like peppers and tomatoes and lettuces and all these other, well, lettuce isn't warm weather crop, but you get what I'm saying. And then if I was going to start these other things, they weren't going to be out of the way by the time I was going to be replanting for fall and winter. And for me, what was more important was actually doing those fall and winter crops and not really the summer crops. And to help with this planning, I'm actually adding a tool to next year's planner in order to help, well, first off, myself, but also to help you guys, which is 1, spacing guidelines for each crop, but 2, also how long does that crop use up that space? It does me no good if I'm ripping out all of my lettuce for a ton of roselle when I really am not going to use that much roselle, but I use a lot of lettuce. Does that make sense? And if you want to make sure that you're completely up to date when that planner goes on official pre-sale and we're going to start shipping, you can get more of the behind the scenes information at www.wildfloridian.net/planner presale. But maybe, and this is something we need to think about with the succession planning, is maybe the space that you were using last year isn't the space you're going to be using this year, which happens. That's what I'm doing this year. So for us, Ben and I have been talking a lot about our front yard garden. We've been talking a lot about our backyard garden, and we are excited to develop a garden of our dreams. We're also maybe going to make some tough choices. We have been going back and forth about this Ponciana and whether it's going to stay or not, because we are losing a lot of productivity due to this one plant. And I brought this up in another video. So we are on the fence about what we're going to do about this still. Love to hear your guys' comments. But our lighting situation, it sucks in the front, and it's going to get worse and worse and worse. And if you've ever seen a really mature Ponciana, which the city I live in, St. Pete, there are some very mature. Yes, I'm not sure when or if what we're going to do with that whole final choice, but the backyard was super, super productive. Almost all of our vegetables this year came completely out of the backyard, except for a few that came out of the front yard. But like we found out before, in-ground is always challenging for us with just the dog. But gosh darn it, Shiloh did her best, but like she was leaping over beds and she made a mess. So our intent has been to go get raised beds, but then it was like, well, what are we gonna do? We knew we wanted to go use these VEGEGA raised beds, and if you want to get VEGEGA raised beds, I highly, highly recommend them. I will have a link and a discount code. Use discount code WILDFLORIDIAN for 10% off. I completely believe in using these beds if that's the way you want to go with like metal raised beds. They're worth it. But before I went and bought a whole bunch of more raised beds, I'm like, am I just doing rows? Am I gonna, like, cause they have really cool shapes, and I talked about that in one of the videos. I'll link that video at the end. But like, they have all these cool shapes, and I was like, well, what are we gonna do? Like, and they have trellises now, and I love me a trellis. But we went around and around, and here's kind of how we went about planning this. One is I looked at what was the surface area? That sounds so very mathy. I know, I'm an engineer, it's okay. So I looked at how many square feet do we have in the back currently in the beds that we use. And then what's really nice is on the VEGEGA website, they actually do have they have the volume of each bed. So like how much soil you would probably need to buy if you're not gonna do like a mixed method. But they also put what the square feet is, so that you know, 1, how big of a space it takes up, but 2, you would know how much surface area you have for like planting into. So I could compare how much space I was losing by getting rid of the row beds versus doing some of these more interesting designs. But really quickly on a piece of paper, I sketched out a whole bunch of different like drawings. But then as Ben and I kept talking about all the crops we needed to grow, I just kept coming back to like, why am I adding a trellis? And the answer really came back to is like, it's pretty. I like the idea of trellises. I feel like it's very romantic. It's very like cottage garden. But from like a functional standpoint, I don't need any more trellises. I've got these trellises up here, even the flat panel trellis that we did in the back, like, which we're not removing. I'm like, we have enough trellis space for the tomatoes that we want to grow. So I don't need to add more trellises. And one of the challenges with trellises is that depending on which way you angle them and the shape of the garden you're going to do, is it's going to potentially provide too much shade for a bed, or maybe you want that shade. But it is something you need to consider, is which ways it's going to throw shade. And the more, even as I kind of rotated and I was like, we could have it on the western side, we could have it on the northern side, I'm like, and I just was like, why? So we're not going to get the trellis, but instead what we're going to do is we're going to do this. And this actually takes up the same amount of space as the garden we have back there right now, which is really cool. So I'm not really giving up that much more area, except we are going to give up a little bit more space because I am going to keep that flat panel. So imagine where it says my garden, there's actually still that flat panel trellis. What I am going to do is I'm going to decrease the bed, because what I did last time is I did the tomatoes and then I did like onions in front of them because it was a 3-foot deep bed. And honestly, to access the tomatoes and stuff, I just don't think that's valuable. So what I'm gonna do is give up some of that walkway and some of that space so I can shift this in, and then we'll just use a little bit more space for this. But is that pretty? And we basically, of the, I think we're giving up 106 square feet of bed space, and then we're gonna get 116 from this. And I thought this was really cool. And since it's in our backyard, and most of our windows actually face our backyard, and you actually have a much better view of this than any of this in our front yard. And something you might want to take into consideration with yours is like, how much are you going to look at it? Because like, if you want it just to be practical and functional and it's out of the way and you don't care, or you don't really look at it and so it's not really, doesn't really matter, fine. But if it's an area that you really are going to see a lot, like, you know, prettify it, make it pretty. But one of the things I do need to think about, and that's what we were talking about with that succession planning, is if this is the space that I need to then plan against, what am I putting in immediately? How many crops am I going to fit in? And then if it's in an area that we want it to be a little bit more pretty, how do I keep this pretty and nice looking and not like a crazy person? Which I don't mind being a crazy person, but like sometimes you just want to be like looking really cute, and that's cool. Like today, I feel like I'm looking really cute. So there you go. If you don't have like a really advanced, like, oh my gosh, succession plan, not a big deal, but it is something you really should be thinking about, because what you don't want to do is eat up a bunch of space with warm weather crops and then not have enough space for cold weather crops, because we go right. Honestly, like if you look at, you know, what we're going to be planting in the near future, we are very quickly going to be able to go from starting warm weather crops to being able to do cold weather crops. So if you don't have a good plan in your head of like how much of the space you're going to eat up for one versus the other, you're going to have a hot little mess that you're just not going to enjoy. And then it's going to be Christmas and you're going to be like, boo-hoo, I'm ignoring my garden. Because I've been there. I feel like I'm so one with nature now, because this whole time I've been talking to you guys, there's been like 2 wasps, like literally right here off camera. They know I'm helping them. So they're just like, yeah, we'll just hang out with you. You can just keep talking to these people. Okay. So things that we talked about. Okay, so we thought about what was the good, bad, and ugly of our past experiences, what recipes we might need to look into. We thought about what seeds we're gonna really need to buy. We planned our beds, both if we need to buy new beds, and this also goes for container gardening too. What containers you want, because I'm gonna still be using some containers because they're easier. Oh, and as many great ideas as I'm giving you, what things are you thinking about? What are things that I miss? But what are the things that you've already gotten done? What things are you gonna be getting done? What other things should we be thinking about that I didn't mention? Put that down in the comments, because right, we're all about helping each other in this Wild Floridian community. And you guys are amazing, amazing. I read all of the comments. I'm sorry I can't reply to all of them, but like I read all of them, and it's phenomenal information that everybody's giving each other. So make sure you add your own comments, or just go read all the amazing, amazing advice that's being given down in the comment section below. We've hit a lot of these things, but some other things you should be thinking about. Okay, like my back bed, it's gone nuts with torpedo grass. We're gonna do a separate video about torpedo grass. You can learn more about it. But I'm gonna be getting tons of mulch. I've already put in a mulch order. But like, think through that. What amount of mulch do you need so that you can reborder areas? Do you need to purchase a bunch of soil? Do you need any soil amendments? Are you gonna start composting? These are things you should be thinking about. And especially if you're gonna be doing bulk orders, or if you do like get chip drop, that's where I get all my free mulch. I know a lot of you guys ask me that. That's the website you use. It's free, or you can give them like a $20 donation. It's not that big of a deal. and you get your chip drop. But sometimes it can take weeks, or sometimes your area isn't serviced, so you need to have like a backup plan to your plan. So it's good to start ordering those things now so that you definitely make sure you have them and are ready to go when it's time. Other things you should be thinking about, well, any tools I guess that you need, you should get those, because a lot of the garden centers just clear everything out, especially once we hit fall. Once they start thinking Halloween, all the garden stuff gets like, I don't know, they're like, forget this, we don't want any garden stuff. So your tools become a lot more limited that you might need to buy. So go check out any tools. If you want to list the tools that I use for moving mulch, I just have like little groupings of lists. They're all in the comments so that you can kind of figure out, from things that I use to wear to stay safe, to hand tools that work really well, to pruning tools, to like I said, tools for moving mulch, because I do that. I feel like I do that a lot. It's how I stay fit. And we're getting the seeds. Something else to be thinking about is, how are you going to be starting your seeds? So are you going to be doing in-ground seeds? Are you going to do soil blocks? I tried soil blocks this year. This is when I realized I had like a major light issue. I have light issues all over the place. I just have shade, and it's my own fault. Can we be clear about it? It's my own fault. I have too much shade everywhere, and then I'm constantly struggling. Like, all the shade issues is me trying to create my own little like cooler microclimate, which we are cooler than our surrounding areas, or warmer in the winter. But it means I'm constantly battling sun. Not battling sun, I mean fighting for sun. My problem with my soil blocks this last season was I didn't have enough light. They got leggy, and then I was just like, forget it. But I got a really good idea from my buddy Patrina, because she's really into those like little aquaponic, hydroponic system thingies, like that you can do like the little grow lights on. I've had people offer me grow lights, and I'm like, I'm not gonna do a whole grow light system. That seems like too much. And I don't want to grow lettuce in my house. Nature stays outside. I support a lot of nature, but it stays outside, not inside. No nature inside. So I needed to figure out a way that I could start seeds, but not deal with one of the issues that I need you guys to think about, is if when you start seedlings, fall is a very, very hard time to start seedlings, because we get monsoon rain in the fall. So any of your teeny tiny babies that you're gonna start in ground, any of them you're gonna put in tiny little pots and have out in the elements, even though they may be shaded away from intense sun, they are gonna be very much exposed to monsoon rains that will smash them. And I have 2 years in a row lost many seedlings to these smashing type rains. It's like we get 9 inches in like 36 hours or something crazy like that. Happens all the time. Every September it happens. August, September, we get it, and it's a mess, and everyone loses a ton of seedlings. So what I want you guys to be thinking about now, where are you starting your seedlings? I'm gonna be using this Let Pot thing. I'll put a link in the description so that I can start mine. I got the idea, when I hang out with Patrina, she has them all around her house. And I was like, which one's really good? Do you start seeds in these? And she's like, yeah, totally. I totally clear out all my lettuce and I start seeds in them. And I'm like, I'm gonna get one of those. So I have one now, and that's what I'm gonna be using to start my seeds, because I can keep it on my patio, give my seedlings light, and then be able to control the environment more, which hoping that means I will have much more successful seedlings that I can transplant out quicker than I have in previous years. There are many right ways to do this. I'm not saying this is the only way to do it, but I do want you guys thinking about this. So whether you're gonna use a similar system that myself or Patrina uses is totally cool, or if you can do it in pots and have it in a more protected area, or you're gonna do something totally different. I just want you to think about the fact that we are still gonna have smashing rains. We will still have very intense sunlight until we hit about October, and we really will still have pest challenges all through fall. If you wanna have a really good start to your harvest, you need to think about how you're gonna go do that. Also, things to think about: do you need seed trays? Do you need seed starting mix? Do you need a new shovel? I broke one of my shovels. I didn't know that was possible, but I broke a hand shovel somehow. I broke the tip off of it. Okay, I feel like that was a lot. I feel like we covered a lot of things to be thinking about. And you know what? A lot of this stuff you can do inside your house, because it's ridiculously hot and humid and gross out. So just like up north, in the winter when they plant, because it's freezing out, which blah, this is the time of year. It's gross out right now. There's stuff you can do outside, but mostly it's gross out. So stay inside and start doing a lot of planning. And again, if you want to get the Wild Floridian planner, go check it out right here. You can get the digital copy still for this year. And if you want to make sure that you keep up to date with the pre-sale, go to this link so that you can get on the list and be aware of as soon as it comes out. And I'll give you some behind the scenes as we develop and finish putting the new one together. And if you need some more inspiration as you're getting into your game plan and want to think through like, hey, I wonder what specifically Jacqueline's going to be growing, go check out this video right here. Or if you're thinking about getting some raised garden beds, totally go check those ones out. I have a video I just did on the 1-year review. See if that's the right fit for you. And any of the other things I talked about, there'll be links in the description so that you can get all the tools and things you need to set you up for a great fall vegetable garden. And winter and spring too. Okay, I'll see you soon. Bye.